I'm joined by Dr. Subramanian, professor at the Indian School of Business. He was the chief economic advisor to the Government of India till recently. Dr. Subramanian, welcome, and it's great to have you back on the news track. I want to start by asking you about the level to which you think the rupee can continue to depreciate. I'm looking at different research reports put out by different banks, treasuries, and I'm not able to get a fix on A, the level that you think the rupee could depreciate to, B, how long this depreciation will continue. So let's start from there and then we'll build on this thread.
Firstly, Rahul, I think it's quite important that we understand from an economic point of view, the level of the rupee is something that we make far too much noise about. But economically, it does not matter as much. It is essentially just a statement of the relative prices between the two countries. That is what the exchange rate really is. So I definitely don't worry as much about the level. I do worry about the volatility if there is basically volatility in the exchange rate. That is something that worries investors, but level is something that is determined by market forces. Now, given that broad comment, I think what is important for us to keep in mind is that during times of economic uncertainty, investors, and especially because a large majority of investors are based out of the United States, there is home bias. And so investors actually, because of the flight to safety, typically move their money back to the United States. That's why if you look at the relative depreciation of various currencies vis-a-vis the US dollar, whether it's the Japanese yen, whether it's actually the other currencies, clearly the depreciation has been much larger than that of India. So there has been a secular depreciation. Russia is the only one where there's an appreciation, and that is because of the enormous inflows that have happened from their selling of oil. But every other currency has depreciated. That's point number one, which is illustration of the flight to safety and the home bias of a majority of.
So let's come to the level to which you think the rupee could depreciate. It's breached the 80 level mark, which is psychologically significant. It's also becoming the topic of a hot political slugfest between the opposition and the government. But do you have a sense of what level the rupee could depreciate to, and do you have a broad sense of when could it be in October or even later, till when the depreciation continues?
Rahul, I actually will emphasize again, in my response to your first question as well, I did say that actually the level, does not matter from an economic perspective. From the politics perspective, that's not something I actually, at least care about as much. And so I will emphasize again, because you're repeating that question again, without factoring in my first input, that the level does not matter, point number one. The psychological levels are basically, are just made out by news anchors like you. I don't think they matter really. Second, as I said, the depreciation for the rupee has been much lower than that of other currencies. That is something we have to keep in mind. Third point, and something that I was going to mention as well, if you look at the 2020 to 2022 time period, and I put out a tweet on this as well, the rupee was very, very stable. But if you look at over a 3-decade period, starting from 1991 onwards, rupee has typically depreciated about 4% plus, and that is because we are actually a net importer, and therefore we have to pay in foreign currency. So I think these are important dynamics that we must be worrying about as economists. That is what I would recommend, rather than actually worrying about a number.